Good morning and good afternoon, all. Thank you all for joining us for our continuing education course today. We've got a special course for you today with a great guest speaker on the business side of dentistry. This is a great key component where we'll get into some of the key essentials of running a smart and profitable dental practice. We'll talk about how to focus on cost controls for overhead, as well as some key negotiation techniques to help in a variety of elements of your practice. My name is Eric Pook. I manage our healthcare leasing team here at Cirrus Consulting Group. I have been involved with consulting or been involved with small business and entrepreneurship, which was my major, and involved with working with and running my own small business back in the late 90s, consulting with the e-commerce boom at the time, and then helping to build and grow small to medium businesses throughout North America. I'm also joined by an incredible guest, one of the foremost experts in the dental industry, Mr. Kerry Straine, who's President and CEO of Straine Consulting. He was voted #1 consultant in 2012. He's been working with over 6,000 practices, from startups to the largest groups. Straine has always worked as a key trusted advisor for dentists throughout North America. He's also the co-creator of the Henry Schein practice analysis that many of you may have experienced in your own practices today. And also to note, both Cirrus and Straine Consulting have been selected to be a key part of Henry Schein's Business Solutions program. And Kerry's certainly been in the business for over 25 years and has now had over 25,000 consultations throughout North America. So we've got some truly great financial information, some really great tips and tricks on helping to make sure that your practice and the business side of dentistry is working as optimally as possible. Great. So without further ado, a little bit about Cirrus Consulting. For those of you that haven't heard of us before, we're very unique. We are the only firm of our kind that is specialized to be healthcare and dental specialized as a tenant representation firm, specifically helping with the commercial real estate as it regards to the dental office lease agreement. We were founded by dentists for dentists now almost 25 years ago. And since then, we have very humbly have accomplished over 10,000 dental and medical office leases successfully throughout North America, as well as the organization structure is very unique. So we have the consulting department, of which I manage, which is involved with helping to review the leases, creating some high-level real estate strategies, as well as we have our lease negotiation team, which is comprised upon our in-house legal and former real estate brokers and commercial real estate attorneys specifically experienced in representing dentists through the commercial office lease negotiations. We represent and work with about 1,000 doctors throughout North America annually. We've also delivered now over 100 plus continuing education courses annually as well, including this one. And we're also involved with many of the major dental conventions. Hopefully for those of you in the New York area, I think we've got about 5 or 6 from the Manhattan area on the line today. We'll be speaking at the Greater New York Dental Meeting coming up this coming year, as well as the Pacific Dental Conference, Yankee, California, which is coming up as well in Northern California, and obviously we're working throughout the country. So the purpose today is, again, on the business side of dentistry. So to start off, one of the core components is of our monthly expenses is the rent and tenancy costs. So as committed, we'll be doing a high-level real estate market update from some of the major markets in the U.S., as well as for some of the format today. We'll also at the end going through some different polling, as well as some additional Q&A. And for anybody that's interested in seeing some of the specific information for their own specific market, sub-market, or even individual building, we can certainly arrange that for you at the end of the call. Also, we'll help to determine how and if you're overpaying in market rent. In addition, we'll be focusing on some of the major traps and pitfalls which are in the lease today, as well as some of the specific strategies to remove these key elements if they're in your lease today, or if you're negotiating a new lease, if you're entering into a new space, if you're looking to expand the practice or make any investments to renovate the practice, or eventually looking to transition, is a key component to ensure that you're aware of what's within your lease. We'll also touch on some key tips and tricks in terms of how to negotiate the best rental rates and terms with the landlord. as well as ensuring a profitable practice sale and eventual transition. And this is certainly one of the main cruxes when it comes down to a smart, profitable practice. It's fantastic, the operations of the business today. However, it is all too common and really a hidden element of the business of how challenging the practice sale can be. If you speak to some of the practice transition specialists or otherwise, many describe themselves in real estate hell, meaning that the landlord has such control over the practice sale that they can make it incredibly difficult at the end, all determined on how the lease is provisioned. So we're going to go through some practical examples as well today. So here's some of the updates. As you can see on your screen, for those of you that are watching through your laptops, as well as a number on their mobile devices, this is giving a vacancy and rental market update. And this is a line chart that shows the vacancy rates on the left-hand side, which for the Boston market ranges from about 6 to 10%. You can see that in orange. So that went from, in 2013, as the economy was rebounding, from about 10% vacancy. Now it's leveled out a little closer to about 6.5% vacancy rates. And then the rental rates, as you can see, correspondingly has also now increased from about $32 per square foot all the way up to about $44 per square foot. So some key takeaways for a market such as Boston, which is pretty typical as we're seeing the U.S. economy continuing to build and grow and gain momentum, that rental prices are increasing purely as supply and demand. And therefore, for those of you that are within a market where you see rents continue to increase or the economy continue to increase, the earlier you're able to lock in long-term rental rates, especially through your option to renew term, the better it is to help give you long-term stability, protection, and hedging against those fluctuating future rental prices. Here's another great example, Chicago, similarly, right? We've seen vacancy rates continue to go down from about 15.5% down to about 11% currently. And correspondingly, rental rates have gone from about 16.5 up to about $20 per square foot as well. So again, for those of you in the Chicago market, assuming this continues to increase by negotiating a long-term lease as well as or within your renewal, starting the renewal portion early, gives you the benefit of knowing what those costs will be upon the upcoming renewal of your lease. Orlando, where we were recently at a Henry Schein event not too long ago, a little more constant, as you can see, a little spike in 2015, but all in all fairly commonplace. San Francisco and the Bay Area, which I'm quite active with, is pretty incredible, the amount of growth, and now we're seeing vacancy rates really at a pretty all-time low, hovering at or slightly below the 1% mark. So as you can imagine, rents are correspondingly continuing to increase. That market is incredibly hot. And for those dentists looking to transition, for those looking at giving themselves some key protection in the future, certainly it's a key market to be aware of and ensure that you are negotiating as early as possible, as successfully as possible, especially when it comes to the financials. But knowing that there is a high demand for any vacancy, especially based on the boom of the many of the tech firms out there in Silicon Valley. For those of you that haven't seen it, we recently released a video from one of our clients, Dr. Sam Thatcher, who gave us a nice video letter of thanks not too long ago. He is also the dentist for the San Francisco Giants. He was in a scenario where he was towards the end of his dental office lease. He had missed his option terms. He had a family friend who was an attorney review the lease, but there were many, many clauses that were some significant concerns. So he gave us a great glowing testimonial and attributed some $100,000 worth of thanks and avoiding some of those pitfalls within the lease today, on top of some of the financial components that was being able to be negotiated. So even if you're in a very hot real estate market, the value that you bring to your landlord is incredibly high. And most of our clients truly don't realize how important they are to the landlord, because the landlord does such a great job to position the fact that there's a lineup of other doctors ready to take over your space, when in actuality, you represent a large amount of clout because of the large investment that you make into your space. So, doctors, I ask you, what is a lease? we speak at seminars, conferences throughout the country, we always ask this key question. So what is a lease? Well, some of you may say, for those of you, there's some abilities to participate and raise hands and whatnot through here. There's some key components, right? Some of you may say it's a agreement, it's a contract, commitment, right? That is all correct, right? It is benefiting you as well as it is benefiting more so the landlord, as they were the ones who drew it up. When it boils right down, ultimately the lease represents a paycheck. And for most of us, the lease agreement for your dental practice, medical practice, etc., is arguably one of the largest checks that you will spend to one single vendor throughout your personal or professional life. When you look at how much you're spending in base rent plus common area maintenance or otherwise, right, this can easily equal $3,000 to $4,000 a month, which can increase anywhere from 2, 3, 4, or CPI annually, increasing every single year. Right? On average, we're seeing across the country dentists practicing for anywhere between 28 to 35 years on average, and therefore this represents well over $1 to $1.5 million of total spend. In some of the larger markets for larger practices, that can be well over the $2 million mark. So be very cautious, right? Before you sign anything with the landlord, really understand the leverage you have based on the amount you're about to invest in that space. It is your largest investment behind salaries, right, as well as some of the individual merchandise and others you do within the day-to-day, but it represents such a large investment that it is critical that you ensure that your interests and goals are best positioned to ensure your long-term profitability in running that smart practice. So you may ask yourself, well, why is it so important? Why is it to me? If it's such a challenge, why should I make sure that it's properly provisioned? Ultimately, the lease and the location is your business. Your business is your location. Right? Your patients every day drive past your building. They're in the habit of coming to see you at the one central location, right? It is very different than any online or other type of business today where the brick and mortar is critical, where you're conducting great clinical care. Therefore, the lease, in essence, represents the concrete or solid or perhaps shaky foundation to the practice. Right? The lease is what gives you the agreement to ensure that you'll be in that location for a foreseeable period of time, as well as the commitment, as well as your expenses to be in that location to ensure continual care to your patients, and that you can put in all your leasehold improvements as well as trade fixtures, right, etc., into that location. Also, if you're unaware, congratulations, you represent the highest amount of not only barrier to entry in terms of cost, but the highest amount of investment necessary in order to build out your dental practice. Across the country, we see anywhere from $125 per square foot all the way up to $250 per square foot to design, permit, build out, right, and equip a dental practice today. Therefore, it has never been more difficult to open a dental practice. It has never been more challenging to operate a dental practice, and it's certainly more challenging than it was 5 years ago, than it was 5 years prior to that, than it was 5 years prior to that. So therefore, it becomes more and more important that you're aware of your roles and responsibilities when it comes to the lease, as well as to ensure that you're protecting yourself and properly negotiating the agreement. Of course, these days, some of you may have something called a relocation right in your lease. Imagine, if you will, as we've had a number of calls in the last 6 weeks of doctors who have been sent a registered letter from the landlord expressing their ability to express the relocation right in their lease. What's involved with this, depending on your lease and how it was provisioned and negotiated, is anywhere from 30 days notice to upwards of 6 months notice of the landlord's ability to move you from Suite C to Suite K in your center or medical or office building. right? Therefore, that gives the landlord more or less complete control of not only how much they'll pay for, but also the notice period. And as you can imagine, that can be and has been devastating for many doctors that are in the stage of having something really blindside their business and put it through incredible hardship. And the biggest issue is not just the cost of moving, is the time, and the time that you are not open. And rates we're seeing nationally are significant on a monthly basis when it comes to patient attrition. Once they leave, we're seeing that the patients and active patients are not coming back, and that's a key component of what Kerry will be talking about in the future in terms of managing the profitable practice. So to be managing the smart practice, right, ensure that you're protecting yourselves from these type of clauses that may be hidden in your lease today. Also, for those of you that are thinking of selling your practice in the next 5 to 10 years, it is critical for the practice sale, or quite frankly a requirement of the agreement of purchase and sale of the practice, is a successful transfer of the lease from yourself to the new doctor, or if you're the new doctor acquiring the space, it must be transferred to you. So if you're the acquiring doctor, you must be keenly aware of the debts and obligations that is coming forth with this lease, right? As well as for the selling doctor, you may also be continually liable for the lease even after you've successfully sold the practice. So it is a requirement, and for most, if not all of your leases, you are not able to assign or transfer, or in essence, therefore, sell your practice without the lease being successfully transferred onto the new, and that requires written approval by the landlord. So the assignment and subletting section, which we'll touch on today, is critical for that. So let's touch on the saleability of the practice, right? Because when we're really talking about profitability, it's not just about the day-to-day revenue and costs, right, and what's left over at the end of the month. One of the largest components of the eventual return of the practice is the value for selling it, right? And in some of the markets, we're seeing anywhere from 70% of annual collections. In some of the hotter markets now, 80, 90, if not in some cases upwards of 100% of annual collections. So there's a lot of factors involved, but what are the main three? Well, the first, as you may imagine, is the equipment. This is pretty straightforward. You can easily get some assessments from the broker or the accounting firm helping you to look at the equipment, what is the depreciated value, right, and how much are you able to acquire, and what is that equipment worth on the open market. In addition, you may mention that the goodwill, right, all the time, energy, effort that you've put in, right, blood, sweat, and tears over the years in building a great patient chart, right, that chart and goodwill is your active patients. How much work is in your book of business, how much work is anticipated, and what does the future revenue look like is of incredible value to the acquiring dentist or corporate entity for your location. But I ask of you, what can impact 100% of the practice value? It is the lease. The lease, more often than not, can either impact the sale, stop the sale, or scare away the buyer for the landlord being able to execute some of the things that they may be able to within your lease today, which includes dramatically increasing the rent. You know, putting forth a condition that the only assignment of the practice will be allowed unless there is a 150% increase in the monthly lease price. So can you imagine getting a buyer and seller together, doing all the due diligence, getting everything done, and in the 11th hour, the landlord now is holding up or causing a delay or asking for consideration, meaning there can be provisions within the lease that entitles the landlord to a percentage or all of the proceeds of the sale of your practice. This is located within the assignment and subletting sections, which we'll touch on today as well. So if we can wave the magic wand, what would we want the lease to do for us? Well, at a very high level, first of all, we want to have fair and affordable financial terms, right? Those financial terms can include base rent, the common area maintenance, right, to be capped or giving you affordable audit rights for this. Also, to make sure that it's avoiding any large lump sum that might be transferred over if the landlord redoes the roof or otherwise. Also, it should give you long-term stability and security, right, ensuring that you have term. We always suggest initially for a new start or otherwise a 10-year term with 2 5-year options. This gives you the maximum ability to ensure that you're in place for the foreseeable future, and as well, for those of you looking to sell, term is an asset because a new doctor, in order to get financings from some of our partners, such as Bank of America or otherwise, right, will usually require at least 5 years of lease term if you're looking to have a 5-year payment amortization to pay back that loan. Right? Also, critical to minimize your risk and exposure. Be concerned if you still have a personal guarantee or you're listed as a personal guarantor on your lease today. For those of you looking through your lease, right, look for anything that names you personally as the tenant or reference anything that lists you or, heaven forbid, your spouse as the guarantor. Right? If in the event of your passing, heaven forbid, or a dental specific ailment or carpal tunnel or otherwise, as it stands today, that puts your estate, and if your wife is personally or husband is personally guaranteed, then that also then puts them fully responsible for everything within the lease today. Maximizing your flexibility, putting in things like a death and disability clause, I cannot stress enough, to ensure that that gives you the extra flexibility to be able to terminate your lease early, right, or giving the option for the ability for the family to either renew the lease, right, in component with the sale of the practice. So as we look, what's in the lease today? So as a quick key component, right, you've got your annual base rent, securing reasonable rates, right, which is critical as you're entering into a renewal period. You want to get in front of that. You want to help to negotiate caps. You want to make sure that it's limited to a certain amount. There's all sorts of elements within here, especially with the negotiation of a new lease as well, to ensure that you are properly protected. There are things like fixturing periods, free rent, right, as well as tenant inducement allowance, landlord work. There's all sorts of different levers and abilities for you to ask for to ensure that you're not absorbing the entire brunt of building out a new practice. Some other key components, again, on the profitability for the business side of dentistry, right? You want to be cautious about the operating costs. Are you getting an audited statement showing the common area maintenance fees that you're paying for? Some are paying upwards of 10 to 20% of the tenancy cost, and we find on average over 10% of many of the clients we speak to are overpaying for common area maintenance, meaning the landlord is absorbing costs and passing on costs, which is not aligned with your lease agreement. So be sure that you have audit rights in your lease today to protect you, right, and to ensure that the landlord is not taking being too enterprising, or shall we say creative, over your individual costs. So some unreasonable operating costs as you look through, or anything that involves improvements made to increase the property value. If it's something done to improve their bottom line or improve the asset, then is that really a common area maintenance, right? Most likely not. If they're doing certain building area repairs or replacements of structural components, right, then that's a key component that should be borne solely by the landlord, right? Real estate broker commissions. Why should that be something that you are paying for on behalf of the landlord in your common area maintenance fees? Professional fees not related to your space, also a key component, right? So be cautious as to what is in place today. Also, again, with cost control, with your common area maintenance fees, right, to ensure that interest or principal payments of mortgages or debt costs, right, unless it's specific to your debt or tenant improvement allowance, right, you certainly, again, are some key elements to ensure that you're not paying things that are unreasonable. Market association fees, right, so if they're advertising the property or otherwise, right, that's not driving any traffic to the building or helping your business, if it's just marketing to their property management side or if their own sort of corporate entity, right, then how is that benefiting you as a tenant, and how is that defined as common area maintenance? So those are 6 key examples that for those of you reviewing your leases today or potential leases, right, review those, right? These are the type of things that you want to clearly define in your upcoming renewal or new lease negotiations to ensure that you're not paying more than what you should. Because as many of the existing doctors on the line today realize, these costs can be quite high and quite surprising on an annual basis. So in terms of common area maintenance charges, right, they can fluctuate year over year, and it's critical that you have a right to audit those common area maintenance fees in place today. At a very high level, I wanted to touch on 2 clauses today and then pass on to Kerry. But this is an example for those of you that can see it in front of you and not driving or otherwise right now, is an example of what we see in about 90% of leases. So this is most relevant for you on the call that are thinking of selling your practice or looking at renewing the lease in the future. So you want to be aware of a number of key components. First and foremost, who has the option to renew? For most of you on the line, it will be specific to you, in this case, Dr. Joe Black. And if you were to sell the practice and transfer the lease, the options will not be transferable unless it's properly precisioned within the lease, right? There's also can be other specific terms and conditions or elements that might hold you in default, which will not allow you to renew your lease. Another key element is the dates, right? As you can see here, you must give written notice to the landlord no less than 9 months prior to the end of the term. Do not miss this date. If you miss this option to renew date, which can range anywhere from 6 to 12 months prior to the renewal of your lease, then those additional options, the additional 2 or 3 or 5-year renewal options, will all become null and void if you miss that date. Right? Be very cautious of that. Okay? Also, it might give the landlord to completely tear up your old lease and what you've negotiated and put it to a new standard form lease. Also, it gives in no event the ability to be less than what you're currently paying, right? Or giving the landlord the ability to bump it to whatever the current market rent is. So that is very common, not only if it's for the building or the area. You want to be very cautious that the landlord might not be playing any games and to ensure that you start the process early. Normally 2 years prior to the expiry of the lease, you ideally want to have your lease negotiated long before the option to renew deadline date. That maximizes your leverage. And the final practical example today is on the assignment, meaning that if you are planning to sell your practice, add an associate or otherwise, this becomes very, very relevant to the assignment and subletting section. As we look here, some key components, as we see this in about 75% of leases we review, right? First of all, you cannot sell your practice without the successful transfer of the lease, and therefore it must require written consent of the landlord. Also, it gives the option now, the ability for the landlord to approve the tenant's request, right? Decline the tenant's request, or number 3, to terminate the lease in its entirety. So simply for asking, the landlord has the ability to terminate your lease and therefore market it as a built-out dental practice and completely cut you out, right? That is certainly concerning that you want to be protected of. Again, in the lease reviews that we do, critically important that you're aware of all these individual sections, you're aware of the impact to you, you're aware of the impact to your estate, right, to ensure that you're not giving any of your sale proceeds, to ensure that you're not giving undue control of the sale to your landlord. So that's just a prime example of one specific clause in the lease today that should be professionally negotiated, amended to ensure that it's dental specific with dental specific language. Other traps in the essence of time that we do review, and I can encourage each and every one of you that these elements are negotiable. Right? Don't let the landlord paint you with the brush. It's a standard form lease. You know, just sign it. Do not fall into that trap. You owe it to yourself, your staff, and the practice to ensure that your practice is smart, well protected, and on a path to profitability by making sure it has a solid foundation. As a reminder, right? Also, don't fall into the trap where the landlord will delay. If you reach out to the landlord, very commonplace is the landlord becomes unresponsive. Oh, I've got to check. Oh, I'm on vacation, right? It is very common practice that the landlords will wait until the 11th hour or after the options have renewed prior to proactively reaching out to you. Most will wait until the last month or so to send a renewal notice, and at that point they know it can take upwards of 12 to 18 months to relocate your practice, and therefore critically important, you start the process early. We always suggest 24 months prior to expiry to start professionally negotiating the lease and start with a lease review. This is an example for those of you that have joined our courses before. We've gone through this in more detail, but in a proper negotiation, you want to get all the documentation to ensure that you have an executed lease agreement in place and you have what's been countersigned by the landlord. Don't sign anything without making sure that you have something back from the landlord and you don't have a draft, right? Know what is the governing lease in place today. Also, work with a professional to identify your practice and career goals. Review the office lease for specific risks. Make sure that you have a market analysis and partner with a firm that knows the local market prices and what others are paying, right, as well as ensuring that you are negotiating both the financial as well as the legal components of the lease. And hopefully today is one key takeaway that it's not just about the financials. Some of the largest risk to the profitability can be upon the eventual sale or the legal components of the lease to ensure that that's properly negotiated. So for those of you joining our webinar today, we appreciate your time. We offer a critical dates and risk assessment. This involves 3 to 4 hours worth of due diligence, reviewing the lease, options to renew, right, as well as the local real estate report. We'll also then schedule a 1-hour call with yourself and or office manager or spouse to review your vision and plan on the business side, where the practice has been, where it is, and where it's going, the specific traps within the lease, right, as well as what the ideal looks like for you and negotiation goals, and then create a specific negotiation tactical plan. For those of you online, we'll touch on the offering at the end, but we're able to offer that on a complimentary basis for those of you who have attended. Here's my contact information. We'll align you with one of our senior consultants. And without further ado, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our special guest, as mentioned, voted one of the top consultants in North America, as well as an incredible 25-year experience in the business. It is my pleasure and honor to pass it on to Mr. Kerry Straine. Kerry, over to you.
Thanks, Eric. Am I coming in loud and clear?
Perfectly.
I hope so. Good. Hi, everybody. Well, listen, we've got a few more minutes to spend talking about ways to improve your bottom line. And having been in consulting and in the professional community since, 40 years, since 1978, I've had a lot of experience in working with business owners of many different types. There I am in the front row next to my father in our accounting firm back in, that was 1986. So I think I still look like that, front right. But maybe a little thinner version, but that's my dad there in the next to me, and then on the back left, as we look at it, that was my brother Larry, and the other gentlemen were gentlemen in our firm. So I was in public accounting from 1978 to 1992, and then I started consulting with dentists accidentally. This is really an accidental consultant's experience. I didn't plan on having a specific focus on dentistry. I was just trying to help a dear friend of mine. Client number one in the consulting side had been an accounting client of our firm. So he asked me to help him look at ways to improve his bottom line way back 32 years ago. And it was at that lunch that I realized the expenses weren't the area of focus. It had to be on patient flow, production, and cash flow, which we're going to touch on today. As Eric said, we've conducted more than 25,000 planning conferences with doctors across the United States and Canada. We've consulted with well over 6,000 practices, from startup practices to multiple specialty, to multiple location groups, to the largest DSO and MSO clients in the world today. We've had the good fortune of working with many. And clients are actively in 46 states and several provinces, no territories at this time, although I know we've worked in one. So today I want to talk to you about defining what key performance indicators are, the targets that you need to set for your practice, strategies to increase production, and creating essential policies and operate and management systems to focus you and your team's energy on revenue, not just expenses. And as you looked at some of Eric's charts, about the increase in costs of rent. And I can tell you, living near San Francisco, but also having clients in all states, the cost of operations is not going down. The cost of operation is going up. Your reimbursement rates are going down. And now more than ever, the business owner has to have a clear understanding of what their vision is and the strategies that they're going to lead their team to understand that are housed within written policies and a system to onboard employees or take existing employees and redirect their energy to accomplish the goals of the practice. And last, we have a program called Sync with Straine, or Straine Intelligence Reports. And if you have Dentrix, EagleSoft, or Open Dental, we want to offer a complimentary sync with our dashboard. I spent years developing it. It's the only dashboard that accurately looks into the future. It's the only dashboard created by a consultant, and it's in place working with hundreds and hundreds of practices all over the United States. There's a clear example of our weekly design board. And looking out into the weeks ahead, we want to teach you that on a weekly basis at your weekly staff meeting. Bi-weekly is not frequently enough. Monthly is certainly too infrequent to help bring your team into focus. But as you can see there in the top section, how the doctors are not scheduled to goal. But over on the far right under the blue, hopefully you can see that both within the doctor's schedule and within the hygienist's schedule, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars of treatment plans that have been diagnosed that are waiting to be accepted. And there are strategies that I'll share with you momentarily to help you see the future accurately so you can lead your team. And one of them should be given the assignment of a new title of Future Production Supervisor, to make sure if you're not scheduled above goal in each of the next day, in the next 2 weeks, you're in a high urgent, high important state, and that's the only thing they work on until they get that resolved. Let's talk about what key performance indicators are. We talk about the ABC definitions of KPIs. Number one, they need to be accurate. So as we put together key performance indicators, they must be accurate and reflect the accomplishment so eventually your goals for your business are achieved. They need to be bankable. They've got to bring profit. They've got to be ideas that you can rely on to meet the basic economic necessity of your business. Otherwise, you're backing up. And they need to be curated. Somebody with the experience has got to come up with the right recommendations at the right time. And having worked with over 6,000 practices, from startup all the way to Heartland Dental, we know what the curated strategies are through our experience of proving it out with clients over the last 25 years. And why waste time? I don't want to discuss strategy or debate it. I know what is good and what will work for our clients, and I want to customize a solution for everybody I meet. When we think of accurate KPIs, the understanding of you and your practice has got to be accurate. You are the sum of your knowledge, values, and behavior. And as I talk to young dental graduates about their experiences in running a business, even some of the seasoned owners that have 10 or 20 or 30 years experience in running their business, they can achieve a certain level of outcome, and it's usually driven not by taking care of all their patients, but meeting a certain minimum economic expectation for themselves. And when they meet it, it's amazing, Eric, that so many people feel guilty about earning more money from just doing their job and taking care of their patients. I want to help you through that. Are you fully aware of your historical and future performance of your practice? Do you know how you've done? More importantly, do you know if you're scheduled to goal next week, the week after, tomorrow? And if you're not, what sources you have at your fingertips to immediately act on to turn that in the right direction? Have you cast an accurate forecast of what you want for your practice to achieve? When we think about that, we know where we are, we know where you want to go, and we've got to accomplish goals on that journey that reflect the giving that you have within your heart, within your mission, and the expectation you have as an owner. So what assumptions are you making for casting your vision? When do you want to expand or possibly pursue a capital event or sale? What economic outcome do you want annually, professionally for your business? Are there some CE courses you want to take? Do you want to move to a new facility? Do you want to bring on an associate? All these things are your goals, and they have to be understood. And economically, are you funding your lifestyle the way you know it needs to be funded? Eric, what's scary is that we know that fewer than 5% of dentists will be economically prepared for retirement, let alone their teams. And what that means is today, my advice is to take an accurate look at where you are economically within your personal budget, paying off student loans, practice loans, but also funding your retirement and your life insurance and your disability and your long-term care along the way. You're responsible for you. And what is that all about? So we need to begin with, where are we? Where do you want to go? And what are we going to do to make sure we accomplish your goals? What economic expectations are you making? We map out in our cash flow projections what you're going to earn based on your patient flow, your facility, your production, your collections, and your overhead. And with that understanding, we can ratify that this plan makes sense or not. Now, you may see in the spreadsheet a new word down at the bottom left. It's called EBITDA, and it's an acronym that stands for earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. And it will be the measure of what your earnings are from owning your business, as your earnings from being a doctor are included in overhead, and it is the true guide to establishing value on a doctor-to-doctor sale. If you've got fewer than a dozen practices, you might get twice as much as a doctor-to-doctor sale would earn. And if you're a real strong DSO with a wonderful platform of administrative expenses, you're going to get in the mid-teen multiples of that amount in terms of value. But that's a discussion we can have personally. Bankable. You know, so many consultants in the industry have recommendations and services to offer, but are they bankable? Are they going to create an economic outcome that you need? And we can have a lot of fun, but we've got to be profitable. A practice can spend thousands of dollars on a marketing plan that may include radio ads, magazines, open houses, secret shoppers that bust staff for not saying the right words on the phone, or so what? I had a client of mine from Alabama once have me listen to a recording of one of his 70-year-old front desk people get spun around by a consulting firm that specializes in phone skills. And he said, "What do you think about her response?" And I said, "Doctor, it's only a reflection of the way you lead. And if you want to change the way that she interacts with a possible candidate, in this case a secret shopper, then you have to lead differently." How does a business owner quantify the results from the investments that they make? Do you have a right to take on new patients with so many unscheduled patients? There's so many things to think about in building the right bankable strategies for your practice. By being able to look at these bankable events on an hourly basis, you can provide feedback hourly to your team, which is way better than looking at an end of week or an end of month report. You know, having spent a lot of money on websites, internet relationships, analyzing Google keywords, search word optimizations. I mean, last year we were committing $10,000 a month. You know, it's the relationships that build the rapport, that create the engagement that leads to endorsement. That's what matters. And curated, we've got to be able to look at the entire data and identify essential tasks that'll move the data. We've got to be able to identify patient flow and cash flow opportunities in your practice and guide your team on what is highly important and highly urgent to undertake every day. So, for example, I'm going to give you a couple of great recommendations to move the needle on production. And this is for my pediatric and my general dental practices. And I know I have some specialists on the call, but your source of supply, more often specialists, are the large GP practices. So why don't you do this? If you want to increase the doctor's production each day over the next 2, 4, 6 weeks, look at the hygiene schedule 6 to 8 weeks in advance to schedule treatment. Identify patients that are scheduled with your hygienist next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way out 6 weeks to 8 weeks in advance, and call them and ask them if they'd like to come in on the same day as their hygiene appointment. And killing two birds with one stone, come in an hour early and get the restorative work or cosmetic work that's been prescribed, done and completed, making it efficient for them to be your customer. And they don't want to come back a second time. And God forbid, most of your patients that are coming in now reappoint for continuing care appointments in 2019. Don't miss that opportunity. Work your hygiene department in the next 6 to 8 weeks, every day of the year. And certainly, if you're not scheduled to go next week and the following, this is all that somebody's got to be committed to focusing on every day until it's done. And then you can look at the unscheduled treatment report. Here's a list of patients that are coming in, and I think the day here is in September. And when we look at this, we know the patient's name. They'll come up when we conduct a sync of your software. When was the last time they had bite wings, an FMX, or a PAN, their last hygiene appointment date, the pending treatment amount, the insurance funds available. We see everything that they're going to have available so we can be guided to take action. Let's take a look at your practice. Look at the hygiene schedule. How do we increase it? Well, doctors, you need to be very clear on clarifying your soft tissue treatment philosophy, whatever it is. Chart accurately, make sure 100% of all patients are reappointing. Do you offer adult fluoride and sealants? What percentage of your patients are in perio? This is an example of a hygienist last month that had very few people in 1206, which is a U.S. code for fluoride, and no one in perio maintenance, the 4000 codes. So, there's just a tremendous opportunity here to look at how your practice is performing so we can start to capture the opportunities and achieve these KPIs that you're expecting. If you want to screenshot one page, this is it. You need the following benchmarks in your practice established. How many patients will you have scheduled in continuing care by the end of the year? How many new patients do you need a month, adults? How many calls will be made a week or a day, and how many people reactivated? It should be at least 25% of the calls made. Percentage of case acceptance on new and existing patients, there's percentages there. And the dollar amount of the case acceptance has got to exceed the doctor's production goal. What's our accounts receivable to production ratio looking like? And our missed appointments. All these things matter. In our dashboard, we're able to take a look at everything about your practice from the data that's sitting there that we can populate, and based on over 25 years of experience, begin to sort out what you've got and then see the opportunities coming up in advance. I'm going to walk you through a few more concepts that will help you today. If the goal is to increase the bottom line over here on the right, your profit, most people think about reducing expenses. Good luck. They're going up. And so most people read this equation right to left, when the reality is you need to read at this equation left to right. We need to target how many annual appointments you need for the practice and the average revenue per patient appointment. So there's my production, the first two components. Then times the collection rate will yield my budgeted collections. Minus the annual expenses will equal the targeted profit. And we need to make sure the profit not only covers your lifestyle today, but establishes appropriate working capital reserves for the business, for you personally, a retirement plan, and all the benefits plans you need, not only for yourself, but to hire and retain quality employees. What expenses can you really reduce? So let's look at my 5 success strategies. Think about number 1. You want to achieve the targeted patient base. You need 12 to 1,800 patients scheduled in continuing care per doctor. Otherwise, I really think you're just churning patients in a violation of your clinical philosophy. Because the new patients that don't end up yielding a commitment to continuing care didn't get the message. Number 2, that's what that relates to, getting the message so that they accept the treatment plans that have been presented. Number 3, over time when you have plenty of patients, get rid of the flaky patients. Number 4, let's move then at improving collection rate by moving out of lower reimbursing plans or people who don't pay their bills on time, excluding them from the practice. Or maybe number 5 is we need to think about bringing on an associate. All these things matter. So every practice has a finite patient capacity, and it's just calculated by determining the size of your hygiene department. If patients aren't in continuing care, they're not active, they're not completing treatment plans, they're transitioning into clinical crisis, they're out of care. And look at this perio charting. It's a mess. There's no gingival margin documentation. There's no bleeding on probing. This is the result of the way the hygienist charted based on the owner's leadership. And if we're going to have bad records, well, let's just say when I represented a client in front of the auditors of the government, I never wanted bad records. And it all begins with the owner. So what staffing model are you going to have? 1 doctor, 1 hygienist? Okay, there's 3 ops. 2 hygienists, there's 4. 3 hygienists? Some states you can't have that in the U.S. Whatever your model is, we need to cast it, commit to it, and make sure you're ready to learn how to lead it. You see, the practices that are producing down in the $600,000 to $800,000 range are in a state of stress. An adolescent practice, $1 million, inconsistent cash flow, poorly defined policies and systems, arbitrary protocols, independent warriors out there, out-of-aligned staff, insurance-driven patients. But a mature practice is defined by 2 hygienists for that 1 doctor or more. Consistent patient flow leads to consistent production because of policies that guide us to take the action we're supposed to take, the system that makes us capable, prescribe protocols, an organized team, and a value-driven patients. When that model's in place, we can replicate that model. When model 1, the first model's in place, we have all the goals met, we can go on to model 2. And eventually, maybe you're going to expand and own your own building and continue to grow it. You know, Dr. Workman at Heartland started with just a couple of practices. You don't get to 850 without the protocols and systems in place to guide you there. So whether it's you or a group practice, we need to have a vision and a plan. As you visualize the movement of your patient through the practice, from the first visit, the patient appointment, to the examination diagnosis, to a treatment plan and FAs, to scheduling, confirming, deliver treatment, collecting the copayment, reappointing, and billing, collect insurance, you got to have a plan. When we think of that plan, we start to map out what you want people to say and do. We need written operating policies. The first 4 are all clinical: new patient radiographic, continuing care, and problem focused. Then we can move into financial policy, scheduling, confirmation, late patient missed appointment, and reactivation. We start with our best practices policies and we customize them for you. Then we introduce the management system. It's comprised of 3 components: the structure, your org chart, your employment handbook, your job descriptions, the operating policies, everything you need to have in place to define your way before you bring someone on board. Then we onboard them in our process through training and then mentoring with your department leaders that report to you, so the team has someone who they can go to be coached, someone who has great emotional intelligence to be able to support the growth of your employees, knowing that we're on track with our feedback and benchmarks. Ultimately, our written policies. The system and the policies provide the team with purpose, clarity, and focus. So the Straine team provides the entire dental industry experience and expertise in strategic planning for all sizes of practices and all specialties, creating customized systems and policies, training, monitoring, and coaching. It's like giving someone a key to an airplane and wishing them good luck to taxi it, let alone start it. Is like giving someone the keys to owning their own business. We do work on communication, behavior, and values and motivators analysis and training, and then we provide our dashboard. So this takes the guesswork out of your life, seeing what's coming up in advance in a simple way so you can create everyone with an understanding of where we are, what needs to be done, and enlist their support. So as we have huddles with our clients, we've automated the data collection process. Let's look at the previous day, production, treatment, and collection report by provider. What was the production goal? What did we schedule? What did we produce? What did we have in pending treatment? What did we get in case acceptance off of that? New diagnosis, case acceptance, missed appointment, perio conversion activity, people leaving in a perio code, and amounts collected. Nobody had to manually collect this. Then we want to look at, see if all the patients who came in reappointed. Then we want to see what's happening today. And this was for yesterday when I pulled this up for this practice. This is all automated today, so you can see if each provider scheduled the goal or not, and the pending treatment plans on existing patients in the second column from the right get you excited, because then you can see in the second column from the right on this report how much insurance is available, let alone in the middle column how many unscheduled family members there are. And this is going to provide you with immediate information with our training to act on and go accomplish your goals. We want you to have a free sync with our Straine intelligence reports and a consultation with one of our team members or me, 1 hour, absolutely free. And I always ask these questions. Can you answer these questions in less than 3 minutes from your practice software? Is every provider scheduled the goal every day in the next 2 weeks? Is your practice scheduled the goal in each of the next 6 weeks? Do you know where to look to fill openings in the hygiene and the doctor's schedule? What about the case acceptance rate of each provider? The reappointment rate of each provider? Do you know how many unscheduled patients there are in the practice that have been seen in the last 18 months? Is every new patient returning for another appointment? Do you know if every canceled or missed appointment has been rescheduled, or are they sitting out there in purgatory? And do you know the percentage of patients in your perio program? We're going to be able to see all those things, and I'm going to show you in less than 3 minutes how you can keep your fingers on the pulse of your practice. So the action to take is contact Peter Stevenson to schedule a free Straine Sync or a 1-hour consultation today. And Peter can be reached at his phone number at 916-836-3411 or at peter@straine.com and say, Peter, I was on the Cirrus webinar today with Kerry, and I want to schedule a complimentary sync and a consultation. Or I don't have syncable software, but I want to get on the phone with Kerry. Help me have that appointment so we can help you decide the best strategies to accomplish your goals. Thank you, Eric, and thank you everyone for listening, and appreciate the great work of Cirrus for inviting me in today's call.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Greatly appreciated. Definitely some great tangible results and some key metrics and key questions to ask each of us in terms of the overall business. We'll make it even easier for you. If you're looking to receive the sync with Straine that Kerry mentioned to be connected with Peter, who I had met not too long ago in Orlando, please click through on the poll, and that will allow us to follow up. Also, for the CE credits, please click here. For those of you as the polling is rolling in. And then for those, again, interested in the complimentary lease review with Cirrus and the Cirrus Lease Consultation, you can click through there. Thank you for those, for the Cirrus Straine Sync. Also click through or both. And also, as you can see on the upper right-hand side, we appreciate your feedback. When's the best time to continually have these? Obviously, we're doing these nationally, so we do our best to try to find prime time hours through the day, usually 12 Eastern, but happy to move it to Pacific or later, or do some customized ones in the future based on your feedback. Excellent. Great. Appreciate all those interested with the Straine Sync, as well as the Cirrus Lease Consultation. So we'll keep this up for another minute or two, and then we can go to some Q&A for all those on the line that might have some extra burning questions or concerns. Let it be about their lease, let it be about their dental software, right, or some other tangible ways that Kerry or otherwise can help, right? Ask yourself, do you know what is planned out? What does your monthly production look like for the rest of the month? What does your monthly production look like next month? Right? And what are some tangible ways that you can work with your staff to be able to fill those open holes? Right? Summertime, it's a great time to reflect on the business, and most importantly, with all the vacations, it's a perfect time to get ready for a dramatic and strong finish to your fiscal years. All right, we'll leave the polling up for a few more seconds. Again, appreciate all your feedback and all the requests. Okay, and now for any specific questions, we have a large number still here connected. Here are a large number of online resources and links on how to analyze your rent, the lease date tracker, some video resources, as well as to the links to the Straine Consulting webpage. There's also some great white papers in terms of your dental lease renewal guide, as well as for any Q&A. So for those of you that haven't jumped back to be chairside, feel free to post any additional questions. We'll keep that open for a little while longer. If anybody has any additional questions regarding a profitable dental practice from either Kerry or myself. And also for those of you that are connected to your laptops or computers, you'll have the ability to download any of these links or PDFs for your upcoming reference.
Eric, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody again for attending, and especially for you and Cirrus. These are big issues, profitability, especially look at the long-term lease. And I tell you, I appreciate being involved on this call because the world needs this advice, and waiting doesn't solve the problem. So look forward to helping all these folks and being a part of the solutions that your organization brings to them as well.
Appreciate it greatly. Yeah. For those of you, again, for those interested in the business side of dentistry, here's two great complimentary offers to be able to spend some time, right? Help to inform yourself with information. Know what's in your lease, know what your metrics are telling you, and to provide great clinical care, you want to ensure that you have the resources, including monetary resources, to ensure that you're building, expanding your practice, investing in technologies, let it be with some of our partners at Henry Schein or otherwise, right, to ensure that you're consistently building and growing a smart and profitable practice. Great. So on that note, thank you again for all those that participated in the key polling. We'll certainly follow up with all those that have requested the Straine Sync, as well as any complimentary lease reviews. We'll also be in touch to see if there's any follow-up questions for those of you that are still logged in but might have had to return back chairside. And I appreciate all your feedback on the best times in the afternoon for some upcoming CE credits. On that note, thank you again for all attending today. Don't hesitate to reach out to either of us after we close the webinar. You'll see the additional contact information. Kerry, thank you so much for yourself and your organization. Keep up the great work, and looking forward to working with you guys closely in the future.
Indeed.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.